Although generally understood as a product of Tantric influence in the 6th century CE, the concept of Saptamatrikas found a new definition with the discovery of the Saptamatrika inscription from Andhra Pradesh in December 2019. This inscription, which is now the earliest source for understanding the Saptamatrika cult, now pushes the timeline further back to around 1st century CE, although several archaeologists already associate the Saptamatrika cult to the Pleiades seal from Mohenjo-daro, which in turn is associated with the 7 stars of Ursa Major. When discussing women in Indian art, therefore, it becomes imperative to address the Saptamatrikas, or the 7 mothers, which are varied and diverse in iconography as well as their classification. Although different religious texts have different versions of the Saptamatrikas, the first mention textually comes from the 9th mandal of the Rig Veda, which talks about a group of 7 mothers who look after the preparation of som, the ritual drink that is supposedly consumed by gods for immortality. This mention, however, ends here, and no further mention of the 7 mothers are found in the Vedas. Consequent mentions come from the Mahabharata as well as several Purans such as the Agni Puran, the Matsya Puran, the Vishnu Dharmotra Puran, and the Devi Mahatamya part of the Markandeya Puran. The Agams like Rupa Mandan Puran also mention the Saptamatrikas and their iconography. In order to understand the meaning of the Saptamatrikas, it is significant to isolate the textual mentions from the iconographic definitions. The first significant classification, however, is attributed to the Devi Mahatamya of Markandeya Puran that mentions Brahmani, VAISHNAVI, MAHESHWARI, INDRANI, KAUMARI, VARAHI, and CHAMUNDA as the 7 significant mothers. Still, this isn't the only classification, and several variations are found replacing Chamunda with Vinayaki, Narsimhi, Yami, Mahalakshmi, or Yogeshwari. Sculpturally, the Maitrikas include a rather ambiguous depiction, choosing rather randomly the Maitrikas to be depicted and drawing heavily on variations. The present discussion will now look at figurines that have been retrieved from various sites and are housed in different museums, referring to Saptamatrika panels or talking about the Saptamatrikas as individual sculptures. Our first figurine, therefore, is KAUMARI. KAUMARI is the Shakti of the god of war or SKANDA, also known as Kartikeya. The Vishnu Dharmotra Puran mentions some specific iconographic features related to KAUMARI. She is supposed to be depicted seated on a peacock with 12 arms, holding a dhanush, a bell, a skull, a cock, a flag, a staff or a stick, a vessel or a patra, as well as a spear. Sculpturally, however, very little is included from these iconographic features in the panels depicting KAUMARI, although miniature paintings specifically depicting the goddess can be found. The next goddess is Maheshwari, who is the female form of Shiva as Mahesh. According to the Vishnu Dharmotra Puran, she is supposed to be seated on a bull and has 3 eyes, 5 heads and 6 arms. She holds a trishul or a trident, a bell, a sutra or an aphoristic text, a drum or a damru. Representations in sculptures, however, show a woman seated on a bull nursing a child or holding a baby on her leg. The third Saptamatrika that is commonly found in sculptures is Brahmani or Brahmi. She is supposed to be seated on a swan and has 4 heads and 6 arms. She holds a book, a rosary or an akshasutra of Heliocarpus seeds, also known as Rudraksh. Sculptural depictions of Brahmani show a standing woman with a swan nearby, although other iconographic features in the Vishnu Dharmottara Puran are generally adhered to in her depictions. The next Maitrika is VAISHNAVI, who is the female form of Vishnu, the creator. She is supposed to be seated on a garud with either 6 or 4 arms, with the chakra, a conch shell, a mace, and is usually shown in Varad Mudra. Once again, the sculptural depictions may not be completely faithful to the depictions mentioned in the Vishnu Dharmottara Puran. The 5th Maitrika commonly found in sculptures is that of Varahi, the female form of Varaha avatar of Vishnu. It shows a lady with the face of a boar and a body of a woman. This anthropomorphic representation is perhaps one of the most vicious of all Maitrikas so far found in the sculptures. She is shown holding a chakra, a bell, a mace, and is usually seated on a buffalo. The next Saptamatrika commonly found is Indrani, the female form of Indra. Like Indra, she is also shown seated on an elephant or standing nearby an elephant. She has 6 or 4 arms according to Vishnu Dharmottara Puran and holds a sutra, a vajra and a kalash. However, the sculptures may beg to differ in terms of iconography. The last Saptamatrika usually found in sculptures is that of Chamunda. Perhaps the most popular of the Saptamatrikas, with individual temples dedicated to her throughout the country, she is shown seated atop a corpse. Her teeth are bare, and she usually has 10 arms and holds a noose, a stick, a chakra, a sword, a shield, a bow, a dagger, a spear, and an elephant gourd. Apart from being the most conflicted Maitrika, this particular goddess also has various depictions, some of which show her as a vicious skeletal goddess, while others show her as a much more lenient mother figurine. Apart from these, mention may also be given to Vinayaki, the female form of Ganesh, who is similar to Ganesh in every form, except for the fact that this is an elephant-headed deity with breasts. Another common representation is that of Yami or Yamuna, who is supposed to be the twin as well as the female form of Yam or the god of death. However, rather than being mentioned as one of the Saptamatrikas, the figurines of Yami are found on temple doors or lintels in early medieval art. In Nepali art, Mahalakshmi and Yogeshwari find mention. However, textual sources differ whether Mahalakshmi should be considered as a Maitrika or a manifestation of the Maitrikas, also known as Yoginis. It may be worth mentioning here that the Yoginis also occupy an important place in Tantric Hinduism and are understood to be the daughters of the Maitrikas. The 7 Maitrikas consequently give rise to 64 Yoginis. This being said, the figurines are often swapped for each other in Maitrika and Yogini cults. When studying the Maitrikas in Indian art and iconography, it is therefore worth remembering that the textual sources will always differ from the mentions we find in sculptures. Regardless, it is important to bear in mind that both textual and sculptural depictions need to be constantly juxtaposed while looking at these figurines.